make sure we're online. We are live. Let me make sure it's going out to everybody. It is. I love when technology works. Fantastic. Welcome to Around Town TV. My name is Carla Berlin, and tonight I am thrilled to have with me my special guest, singer, songwriter, and musician. Please welcome Jay Ernest. Jay, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Carla. Very happy to be here.
Well, and you have such an incredible background. And for those who maybe are just tuning in and seeing your name, perhaps for the first time, maybe they've heard of you, but they're not familiar. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about your history and background, and then what got you to Minnesota?
Very good. Well, I'll talk about my most longest lasting successful action right now is with a band called Church of Cash, and we're a Johnny Cash tribute show from right here in Minneapolis. And I currently tour all over the nation and Europe, and put out a number of albums. And we're playing mostly theaters and larger national clubs. So we've kind of did a lot of work in our early years, going through the bar scene and up through the performing arts center scene to be where we're at right now. It's a real treat to perform Johnny Cash's music, as I grew up with it, and it means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to a lot of people. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. And it's been just a very great ride. And I've met a lot of fine people. And it's just a wonderful time to be in the music business right now.
Well, that's fantastic, because a lot of industries, it's not a good time to be in. So it's great to hear your longevity and your success. And I understand that you recently recorded some music in Nashville. Tell us about that.
Okay, very good. So one of the plans was when I created Church of Cash, I've been a lifelong musician, just to kind of rewind a little.
Yeah.
And when the tribute thing started to come along, a lot of audiences really like the tribute act, and as of the last 15-ish years. And I thought, this is a great way to get on stage and be a performer, because in the end, I need to perform. It's kind of in my blood. I have to do it. But at the same time, it was a way to create money to eventually create my own art. And it took a few years to get stable enough with Church of Cash and save up enough money. And then I was very lucky to find some connections down in Nashville through this intermediary. His name is Drake Tegas, and he helps a lot of bands out with marketing and connections. He helped me get in touch with this guy named David Ray Stevens, and he's one of Jelly Roll's main songwriters. In fact, he was the songwriter for the song that's, I think, number one right now. It's called Save Me. It's been number one 3 different times. I don't know how somebody does that, where it comes top of the charts. Yeah. And then I think he did a duet with that song, and then it became big again. Anyways, it's huge. And this songwriter is probably way out of my reach nowadays. But before that song became a hit, him and I wrote and recorded a whole record together under my name, Jay Ernest. I call it Hold Your Horses. And it's accumulation of all the years I had singing Johnny Cash, and then meeting with some high-end songwriters down in Nashville to create something original. As it's a little bit country, it's a little bit Johnny Cash, it's a lot me, and I'm super proud of it. And I've been really trying to push it this last month and a half since it's been released.
Well, speaking of that, if someone wants to purchase that, I have above this video, I have put all your links in. Is there a certain website they could go to get that?
JayErnest.com is probably the easiest.
Okay.
I have links there going to all my acts, but JayErnest.com. If you want to just go to the store and grab one, I just recently dropped off a bunch of copies over at Down in the Valley in Golden Valley, Minnesota. They're going to be the only record store that's going to distribute my record.
That is awesome. Did you grow up playing instruments, singing, performing?
I grew up outside of New Ulm, Minnesota. It's a smaller town, central Minnesota, in the Minnesota Valley. I
Yes.
grew up outside of town. I'm a farm boy, so I think I was probably about 8 miles out of town. And I was in 4-H and all that kind of thing. It was just typical kind of farm situation. Uh, I remember the first time I was really doing music was right around 5 years old. I went to
Wow.
a little Lutheran school called St. Paul's Lutheran. And those
Hmm.
Lutherans like to sing, so I was singing a lot. And another aspect of going to that school that I didn't really tie into where I'm at right now as a musician or even as a singer is when we're at this little Lutheran school, every day you had to memorize something. So before class, you had to recite some kind of memorization, commandments, um, articles from the Lutheran hymnal, the catechism,
Hmm.
or I remember every Friday we had to memorize a hymn, and you had to memorize all 4 verses. You couldn't just cheat and do one.
That's a
So
lot.
all it was a lot, and all that memorization really, I guess, at a young age, kind of programmed me how to memorize. I'm not one of those musicians that has a tablet out or a music stand with music, but with Church of Cash, we'd perform over 200 songs. And I
Hmm.
know all the lyrics to every one of those, and I can go back into bands I played at in the past. I've been in Irish bands, and I can remember probably about 40 of those songs right off the top of my head. I don't know what it is. I think it's those younger days, learning
Yeah.
all those hymns and catechism verses that really helped me out in the memorization department. So,
Hmm.
along with singing a lot back when I was very, very young, and the
Wow.
memorization that went on all through grade school, in 4-H, every summer they had this thing called Arts In, where they did a segment of a musical, and that was always a real cool treat for us. We got to meet other kids from the county that were, musician or thespian or that kind
Yeah.
of actor kind of thing,
Hmm.
and that was always fun. High school did a lot of musicals and was in the advanced choirs and went to all state choir, choir nerdy stuff. But I also got in my first rock and roll band in high school, so I knew music was my thing.
That's awesome.
I I really enjoyed choir. I really enjoyed rock and roll. Went to college for, I guess, choir performance and music business. At that time, I was kind of a hotshot baritone, and I sang a lot of German
Mhm.
lieder. I sang some opera. I
Where did
I
you go to
took
school?
I went to school in Moorhead State, and now it's
Yes.
called University of Minnesota Moorhead. So back in the day, they call it Moorhead State, and just across the river from Fargo. So for me, that was a big town. It was like moving to a big town.
Big
Hindsight, you're
city.
like, Moorhead, Fargo, is that a big town? But to
Oh,
me at the time, it really was. I really enjoyed my time up there, but I took it very serious. I had a regimen. I'd wake up first thing in the morning and go straight to the practice rooms, and I go la da 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 da, and just
wow.
my warm low voice and let that
Mhm.
go. And I do that for about an hour, go to class, and then I go to lunch, and I would have 2 chicken sandwiches with honey on them and 3 glasses of red juice. And that was like my routine. And I would go to the practice rooms right after that, and my voice would just go right off the top. I can hit the super high notes and practice and
Wow.
practice. And then I go to more classes and then dinner. And then I'd always, probably rehearse some more at night. I took it very seriously, but when you're at college, you're with a lot of like-minded people, and there'd be other musicians that were in those same practice rooms. So it was quite a community. A lot
Wow.
of fun in college, and then I created my first band called 3 Minute Hero, and this was in the late '90s when ska music was cool. And for all the
Mhm.
listeners out there who don't understand what ska music was, it was
Mhm.
a derivative of Jamaican music. Reggae came from ska music. Um, we were an 8-piece band, a lot of horns, very danceable, nerdy, fun, and we did very, very well to a point. We got signed to a record label, and then I quit college in my 4th year,
Oh,
figuring that if I need to go back to college, those old brown brick buildings will still be around. But so we hit the road and just starved it out like young musicians did, and and
Mm-hmm.
we were a good band for about 4 or 5 years. And we took home 2 World Music Awards from the City Pages when that was around in the cities,
Yes.
because we lived in
Yep.
Minneapolis. After Fargo, I moved to Minneapolis, and it was very successful doing big shows, a couple national tours, but regionally we were the ones. Plus, this is when ska music was kind of hot, and we're the
Mm-hmm.
ones to go see for that. So all the college towns you can imagine were playing, and it was always a big deal. Super duper fun. Band broke up in 2000. I ended up packing up to leave to Los Angeles because I had this other band that we befriended over the years that used to tour
Mm-hmm.
up in Minnesota. Became good friends with them, and I admired them. I just loved their music, and I just figured, I mean, these are my early 20 days. I wouldn't dare do this nowadays, but on a
Right.
wing on a prayer, I knocked on their door. I'm like, I'm here. Use me. And they're like, we don't need you. All our guys are in the band. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to make something. So I was delivering pizzas and booking bands at bars in LA and just scraping by barely. And then that band called me up, said our bass player left. And I said, okay, cool. I sold all my guitar gear, bought a bunch of bass gear, and then hit the road with this band called Warsaw Poland Brothers. And they
Mm-hmm.
were from Arizona and California. They were really an underground kind of sensation. They're just very, very entertaining. We would play little small bars, but we'd be playing such cool things like we'll play in Aspen at a small bar during X Games, and that's where everybody would, like all the sports kids would go and check us out. And that's just one of the places we played, from Hawaii to Maine, and we just did those
That's
circles around. We did
amazing.
about 270 shows a year. So at the time, I mean, I didn't have a house, a credit card, phone number, checking account. I just lived on the road. Just my whole universe was the music,
Wow.
and that much time on the road, and no distractions. And it just really carved me out as a road man and a bass player. And
Mm.
I had a lot of fun with those guys, did a lot of great tourings, and it really kind of carved me out as
Mm.
like a tough musician type.
Yeah. Well,
When you're
yeah,
out there all by yourself, it's just like you have to fend for yourself. It's like it's a pack of wolves, and you're just
it
out in the
is.
wilderness. So
No,
it was
it is. And you and I are kind of from that era. And I did the same thing in TV. I mean, I cleaned the bathroom and scrubbed the
oh,
floors at my first TV job, and I got to host a show once a month. And I didn't make enough to have an apartment or anything. I mean, I had to live at home for a while till I could go full time and get a few other side jobs. And but one thing I have to say, it was when I first asked you the question, you said, the Lutherans that are singers. Well, not this Lutheran. So I got a funny
oh,
story for you. I'm a
okay.
Lutheran. I was in choir. I was the short one in the front. I wasn't shy. Well,
Ah,
all of a sudden in choir one day, the piano, the choir teacher playing the piano, she said, I want you, because you're like my favorite,
hmm.
to, wear the little rubber. And as they sing, you turn the pages for me. Well, it wasn't until I was so that would have been fifth or sixth grade. And so that would have been, gosh, late 70s, mid 70s, so at seventh grade, I was in 1981. So anyway, that was a long time ago. But, so I was with my now late folks just a few years ago, might have been like maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago. And we were sitting there one night having dinner and a cocktail, adult beverage. And I went, oh, I wasn't the special one, was I? And my mom goes, what do you mean? I said, I just have that awful of a voice. And I was loud and I was in front. She goes, you just figured that out? Why do you think we encouraged you to be the baton twirler? Which I did
Oh
end up doing
no.
world championship. And that was my talent in the Miss America program, which led me to TV. But I was like, my mom and dad are like, you just realized that? I'm like, uh-huh.
Oh, that's cute. So you were the
Yeah.
one in front there, like with the big beaming smile, the face of the choir, maybe not the voice.
Right. And the Lutheran that's realizing she should be doing something else, but never did until later in life. But oh my gosh. So I had to
Mhm.
share that because seriously, you're born with those. Yes, like you worked really hard, but you do have to have some talent, or some talent that can be developed. I was not that person. But there's other things that we do. So anyway, that's amazing. Your background and your work ethic and your drive is incredible. Very few musicians or people starting out in anything they do let alone the hard industry that you're in already. No wonder you're still relevant and you've got all these gigs and things you're doing. In fact, you perform gigs called Church of Cash, which it's talked about a little bit. You touched on in the beginning, which are a world class Johnny Cash tribute. Explain what that means, like to somebody who maybe has never seen you or your shows, or what they can expect when they're attending one of your shows.
Yeah, of course. Church of Cash is what I call a tribute show, and I mean that in the classic way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not trying to do what those Elvis guys do, and put on the beard and the glasses and act like Elvis or Johnny Cash in this aspect. I don't
Mm-hmm.
look like Johnny Cash. Yeah, I might look like Dan Aykroyd, but I don't look like Johnny Cash. So that's how I want to do the tribute show. I want to play this music, and this music means so much to so many people as it does myself. And I don't want to put the importance on the band. We are
Mm-hmm.
here just literally trying to play the music, and as the sound waves rush past your ears, it's triggering those moments, those pleasure moments that you had with Johnny Cash in the background, whether you be on vacation with your family or hanging out with grandma and grandpa, whatever it may be. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to inspire
Mm-hmm.
these moments and have a little bit of reverie amongst the audience. And I tell you, being on stage, I'm always observing the audience, and I can tell when it's happening with certain people, and it's just a wonderful thing that we could all share together. And that's why I called it the Church of Cash. And I'm not trying to be blasphemous. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say, when I think of a church, I'm thinking people are gathered to celebrate. They're there
Yes.
to sing songs. They're there to listen to stories. And I'm not saying Johnny Cash is God or anything, but I'm saying in the other aspects of the physical environment of church,
Mm-hmm.
it's much like that. We're celebrating Johnny Cash's music. We're listening to his songs. We're remembering good times. We're thinking about his lyrics and how they inspire us. And I thought, man, this is kind of like church. And I'm like, Church of
I
Cash.
love it.
And it worked. And it worked for me. And I think it works for people. Sometimes I have to explain it, but when I do explain it,
Mhm.
they get it right away. Church of Cash started in 2010 when I was still living in Hawaii, which
Wow.
is two eras after where I left off with Warsaw. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so I skipped like a big meaty era in there in the middle, but that's all right.
We'll cover
I was,
that. I want to make sure everybody gets to hear about that. And it's funny. I love that you just explained what you did about Church of Cash, about you don't dress like them, because one of my viewers reached out to me and private messaged me, and they're like, "Does he look like Johnny Cash?" And I said, "Well, in the pictures, he looks like him, Jay Ernest." And
yeah.
but I bet he's, because I've gone to lots of different tribute bands, and not everyone is, actually nobody has been dressed like that person.
Mm.
So that makes sense to me, but I appreciate you explaining that. This is just an incredible thing that you're doing with Church of Cash, and you've been going a long time. That's amazing.
15 years now. It started very slow. Started in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was playing in a band out there.
Okay.
And when I wasn't touring, and I was touring with those guys relatively, I don't know, like maybe 2, 3 months a year. And when we weren't touring, we were playing on the island, but the island is very small. When you
Hmm.
look, in general, just the island is not very big. So
Hmm.
we only played once every 4 months, because you play more than that, you're oversaturating. So that is much too less time that I need to perform. So I decided around that same time that I wanted to be better at just being all by myself, playing music. Can I entertain without the help of a bunch of other guys on band on stage with me? Is that something I could do? So I challenged myself. So I got the acoustic guitar out, and I started rehearsing a ton of songs. And so I was one of those acoustic guys that's in the corner. Now check this out.
Hmm.
I played at a Irish bar in Chinatown in downtown Honolulu. That's where I got my start.
Oh my
A
gosh.
place called O'Toole's. And
Uh-huh.
Irish name O'Toole's, but if you pronounce it, the Hawaiian name is Otuoles, but everybody knew it as O'Toole's. So I was that guy in the corner, and I played 4 hours of music. And every time I played Johnny Cash, people were like, you know what? You sound like Johnny Cash when you sing. And I thought, wow, that's quite the compliment. I'm going to
It
go
is.
home and learn a whole bunch of Johnny Cash. And I went home and I started, I started
That's
learning
okay.
some of this
Yeah.
Johnny Cash. And I quickly realized that I already knew these songs because my dad was a huge Johnny Cash fan, and I've been listening to these songs since I was a little boy. And they got trapped in my head just like songs do. And it wasn't that big of a deal for me just to kind of brush up over the lyrics and then go to the next show, play a bunch of songs, and then the crowd went wild. I figured, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for it here. Created the first Church of Cash in Honolulu, but it was soon after that I moved back to Minnesota, and this would have been early 2010. And assembled the band with some people I knew from back in the day and some new people. And we started real modest. We started at a place called Whiskey Junction.
I know where that is.
You know where that is?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And went to Augsburg College.
Oh, you know exactly where that is. You know, in the Seven Corners kind of area down there.
Oh, yeah.
Cedar area.
Yep.
And we played there on Tuesday nights, and we would play for about 5.5 hours a night, and we made $35, which I split 5 ways. And
oh my God.
We did that for about 2 years, and it was a great time to learn, because that's a lot of time on stage, a lot of time to get my band members kind of trained up. And it wasn't long after that I started doing more regional stuff, and then just the whole career just was always just a nice steady like this. I never had one of these one big rocket ride up. It was just been always a nice gradual, which is great for growing, because when you get those big things like this, you have to figure out how you're going to redo your business, how things are growing as fast as that is. With the slow grow, I can keep up, and I feel very, very lucky that I'm in the position I am in, along, of course, with all the hard work, but it's just been a real blessing.
Wow. Well, and that's amazing. Now, I also know you have another brand that's just Jay Ernest shows. If someone's going to come to that separate from Church of Cash, what can they expect with that in your music?
Well, Jay Ernest is not really playing in the United States yet. I'm playing only in Europe as Jay Ernest at this point.
Oh, okay.
So I put out this record. I'm going to be playing songs while I do Church of Cash. I'm going to let that one kind of marinate. And if it gets on the radio and there's a big demand for Jay Ernest, then I'll train maybe Church of Cash or maybe some fresh guys in, and I'll do a Jay Ernest gig. But right now, it's not really worth it for me to play at the Astor Cafe for 6 people. And where I could be on a national or international tour with Church of Cash. So I'm just how I look at it, Carla, in the long run, and I'm gonna be kind of real with myself. I put out a brand new record. I'm not expecting, as almost a 50-year-old guy, that I'm gonna be a big radio hit guy. It's probably not gonna happen. I'm kind of aged out. With that being said, I'm really glad I did this record, and I can tell you why I like doing this record. But in the end, it's going to help everything else out, because people will recognize my name, and they're like, even if they heard just Jay Ernest, they're like, I really like that song by Jay Ernest. Oh, he does a Johnny Cash thing. I love Johnny Cash. And then it's gonna kind of feed into all my other acts. So I in a weird way, I look at it as a branding opportunity rather than something that it's going to be like a hit making machine or a lucrative machine. In the end, and this kind of comes across a point that we kind of dabbled on a little bit earlier. We got to a certain point where I could afford doing this, so I went down to do this record with David Ray Stevens. Now, this guy, obviously is a high-end Nashville songwriter. I consider myself a good performer, a good businessman, but I'm a mediocre songwriter. I know this about my talents. I want to be real. I'm not going to, be from outer space. I'm a decent songwriter, but not one of these Nashville guys.
Okay.
When I went down to Nashville and I met David in his studio, we literally shook hands. We talked for about 5 minutes. He grabbed his guitar and he said, "Do you want to get started?" I said, "Yeah, let's go. Let's have a lot of fun." So he asked me, the first question he asked me, he's like, "Do you have anything written?" I said, "Well, I got a little things here and there written, but I figured you and I would just talk about it and we'd come up with something together." He said, "Okay, well, how'd you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I grew up in the country, drove a lot of motorcycles. I had a couple brothers. We had a lot of fun being farm boys together." And he picked up the guitar and he goes, "The first time I rode that bike, I swear I almost died." And it's my brain just exploded, because a
Yeah.
good country song will say 10 words and it's got 10 pages worth of information in it. And that's exactly this is the first words that came out of his mouth. And then I just started adding in lyrics with him, and then we started doing some chords. And I tell you what, Carla, in this industry of which I've done over 4,000 shows in my life, which is a lot, a lot of shows.
Yeah.
I've experienced a lot of great things. I think I'm on over 25 records I'm on. So I've done this life for a long time. And to do something different like this was a real treat. And then to be around such a professional when it came to this creative part, it was worth every dime to do it. And I just hope that any musician that probably needs help in the songwriting department, if they had any chance to get that experience of working with somebody that's just a consummate professional that knows how to do it. It's just a mind-blowing experience.
Well, for those who are just tuning in, my name is Carla Berline, and I am so lucky and thrilled to have with me tonight singer, songwriter, and musician Jay Ernest. And he's been sharing a little bit about his history, his background. It's incredible. He's lived, everywhere from Hawaii to, and he came back to Minnesota. He's known for his world-class Johnny Cash tribute called Church of Cash. And he also has performed in Europe. He was touched on that. He's been sharing a little bit about what Church of Cash is, but he's got another brand, and that's called Folsom Prison Experience. What is the difference between that show and Church of Cash?
Okay, thank you. Church of Cash is a tribute show. So when I'm on stage, I'm talking to the audience, and I'm talking to them just like we would have a conversation between you and I, Carla.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Sometimes I'll say, all right, what do you want to hear? Or we maybe have a discussion of what Johnny Cash meant. And that's how the Church of Cash show rolls. Now, the Folsom Prison loosely is you're watching Johnny Cash play at Folsom Prison in 1968 while he recorded the famous record called At Folsom Prison. And you as a audience member are now an inmate. So it's a bit of an immersion theater. So as soon as you walk in the door of the theater, you are 1968. You are now an inmate. We give you a sticker that's got numbers. Like you're an inmate. We have guards that walk up and down the aisle. On stage, you have myself. I'm dressed like Johnny Cash. I talk like Johnny Cash. We have Kat Perkins, the wonderful Kat Perkins.
Love Kat.
She is June Carter, and she's absolutely amazing. We've got this band called Hitchville from the area. They play the Statler Brothers. Fantastic, just musical people. On top of that, we have 4 high-end actors that one plays the warden, who everybody hates, of course. There's a MC of the night. His name is Hugh Cherry. He kind of keeps the show rolling and ties the show in that in the end, he's the shill for the record label. He's the one that his whole point of view is the record label. I, as Johnny Cash, as the advocate for the inmate, and the warden wants total control. So there's like a 3-way kind of a power struggle. There's a love story between June and myself. And of course, Johnny Cash has his own demons that he had to work through. And that is all illustrated and acted upon in this, what I call is this close to a musical, but we call it a tribute drama because it's a high-end tribute show that's got elements of drama that tells a story.
I love that. Wow, that's incredible. And I didn't realize that. I mean, when you hear of Johnny Cash, you think of his voice, you think of his incredible success, but we forget that everybody has challenges in life as well. So interesting that you touch on everything and share that. I am incredibly amazed and impressed. And just with one of the things that really impresses me about you is that when you went to college, that you did the business piece of it. So incredible. As you know, and you said, well, I can sing and I can, I have a business background. I'm not, the songwriting thing. Just listening though to you describe what you did in Nashville with that person. Obviously you are a songwriter and you just needed that other person to help you or assist you. It's just amazing to hear of your story and what got you to this point. What would you say is, I mean, you said you're really passionate about Johnny Cash, as are a lot of people. What do you think it is that made you so passionate about Johnny Cash?
Well, first of all, it ties me in with my father a lot. My father sadly passed away last year,
Oh,
and
I'm
now more than
sorry.
well, thank you. Now more than ever, this Johnny Cash kind of brings me a little bit closer to him, and I'm just lucky that I, as a profession, could sing these songs and remember him. He's part when I'm trying to bring the audience along with this journey. I'm going on it myself.
Mm.
There's a part of my brain that is recollecting these times where I was listening to these songs as a kid and even and beyond, because Johnny Cash is one of those guys that people don't really fall out of love with. Johnny Cash. They
No, they don't.
once you're a Johnny Cash fan, and you are one forever.
Hmm.
And you make like his music in and out through the eras, but it doesn't matter. He's like an old friend that doesn't matter how much time you
Just
have
pick up
between the
right where
last
you
time
left
you guys
off.
called. You guys are always friends. He just lives right here in the heart. So I've been passionate about him for that very, very reason, because it brought me closer to my dad when he was still with us, and now that he's not with us, it brings me even closer to him. Um, in a weird way, I would listen to my dad sing when I was a young kid, and he's got a lower voice than I do,
Oh, wow.
and you know, Johnny Cash and my dad were kind of the same person,
Oh,
because I just heard the guy singing. You don't really think about rock and roll when you're a kid. You just hear songs, and
right.
and
Whatever your
also my
parents
dad.
listen to, you listen to, and
Yeah, it's not a thing where you're like, oh, I listen to records. It's like you don't really understand it, but when you're a kid, you hear my dad saying, you hear it on the radio. It's the same thing. So in a weird way, it's kind of intermingled a little bit, but um, the important part is that when I get to be closer to my father singing these songs, and in particular one song, it's called "The Man in Black." It was always his favorite. Whenever he would come see me play, he's like, "Jay, you know what song I want to hear, right?" And I said, "Yeah, pops, you want to hear The Man in Black?" And that was Johnny Cash's, his 1970 hit that kind of created his new persona as the Man in Black. And my dad really resonated with that song, and now it resonates with me.
oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I can appreciate that. I was a caregiver to both of my parents for 12 years, 8 years in the same home. So I listened to the same music they did, and they did listen to Johnny Cash. And you know who else? And I inherited all of those CDs, and even there was even some 8 tracks in there. The Statler Brothers.
Of course.
I have all of them. Yes. And Lawrence Welk.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So
of
we're talking.
course.
Of course. Oh gosh. You know, you were touching on that you'd recorded and performed with some of the artists, and you mentioned Warsaw Poland Brothers. I think you also Go Jimmy Go, 3 Minute Hero. You've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear more of that story of you recording with them.
Yeah, of course. After Warsaw, that ended in about 2005, and in less than 4 years, I did over 1,000 shows with those guys, and one of their drivers fell asleep at the wheel, and almost got killed on the road, and it got to a point where my brain just absolutely fried out, and I was like, what am I doing here? And we weren't doing too many records at that particular time, and that I was in my late 20s at this point, and I thought my career should have a real trajectory, and I felt like I was just being a road guy at that point. And although I really loved the road, I needed to see more, something that was creative, that would, being on a record, some trajectory of like, what are we going to do with this record? Are we going to push it? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
Wasn't really heading in that direction at that time with that band, so I had to get out. And when I got out, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I wasn't ready to come back to Minnesota quite yet. I learned a lot of lessons. And just to kind of recap a little bit, but
Mhm.
one of the reasons I left Minnesota, like, Minnesota's a wonderful place, but everybody's very, very nice here, and everybody's very, very democratic here.
Uh-huh.
And when I was with the 3 Minute Hero band, we were all equal members, and there was a lot of things that couldn't get done because not one voice had the leadership. Like, oh, I like this club, or I don't like this club. Well, you couldn't come to a consensus, and I quickly realized democracy
Interesting.
in a band sounds great until you really want to get something that you really want to get done, and then it gets held up by other people. When I was touring with
Mhm.
this Warsaw band, it was a pair of brothers, and they were just pirates, ruthless pirates on the road. And that's what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn from these guys that were just tough as nails. They knew what they wanted, and nobody's opinion would sway theirs. So, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. I really want to learn from these guys. So I learned from those guys, but I was not done learning yet. I wasn't ready to come back to Minnesota. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I started my own record label there called Jada Records, and I recorded some music with two other bands, Sarah McAllister and this band Army of Robots, who I became really good friends with when I was living there, and they kind of became my new family because I was a fish out of water. I didn't have any connections.
Wow.
Wonderful time, and I was also working at a hotel being a valet. I wasn't making enough money doing music, so I was doing valet, and then running and getting in great shape, and then playing a little bit of rock and roll. But at that around 2007, early 2007, this band from Hawaii called me, called Go Jimmy Go. They knew me for years of touring with Warsaw, and they knew me as a good bass player. But I think they also appreciated that I was an easygoing guy. I'm not, some people could be a little bit tricky to be with for a long period of time, and you got to really think about that if you're going to be in a van or on a tour bus for a long, long time. You got to know how to get along, and I've always been a kind of one of those guys. So they said, hey, how about you move out to Hawaii and we're going to tour? And I thought, yes, because since the first time I was in Hawaii, I made the decision that sometime in my life I got to live out here, and the time came quicker than I thought. So I moved out to Hawaii in 2007 and hit the ground running. This Japanese record label commissioned us to do a Christmas record. So we did that right away. It was super duper fun. Wasn't long after that, I did a tour to China and to Japan. And that was pretty mind blowing. I've never, past Hawaii, I haven't been that far east, if you will. And just being in those two different countries just really expanded my consciousness of just humankind. We're such a European-based society, and you go to Europe and you're like, oh, I could see where all my traditions come from. It's all from the old land. And you go to Asia, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a whole nother universe out here. And it was super duper fun. A lot of great experiences. And I got to tour Europe with those guys. We did another record. So I did a total 2 records with those guys. Some touring, had a lot of fun touring. We did some West Coast touring. We were nominated for a Nahoku Award, which was a pretty big deal in the Hawaiian circles of music. We didn't win the award, but just being nominated was quite a combination, or quite a honor, if you will.
Achievement, definitely.
Wonderful, cool achievement, and I was very, very happy with those guys. It got to the point where those guys were kind of starting to slow down. I think they were kind of doing it for a while. They started getting families, and I didn't have a family yet. But right around this same time, a relationship was blooming back in Minnesota with a girl that I was in grade school with.
Oh wow!
And this was about 2008, 2009. We were kind of talking back and forth when Facebook was kind of young.
Yes.
And I went back home for like a class reunion, and then a family member would get married, and we would get together. And I said, man, this girl is amazing. I'm having so much fun with her. I always thought that I would get together with some, half Japanese, half Hawaiian girl from Hawaii, and have babies, and I'll be on the beach. But life didn't end up that way.
No. It seems like life happens. What's my old adage is, life is what happens when you make a different plan.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
It was really quite amazing. I didn't think I'd get together with a New Ulm girl, but in the end, when my decision, and I'll tell you about it came to a certain point. I remember I was in tour in China, in Shenzhen. And there's this bay that comes right up to the town. And I was on the 78th floor of this beautiful hotel. That's where they put us up for this tour. And I remember looking out at this bay, and there's the saipans and these Chinese ships coming back and forth. And I remember looking at them and thinking, wow, you did it, man. You were a farm boy from Minnesota, and you ended up here in China, and you're playing music, and how cool is this? And this was really amazing. And it was at that point, my whole brain just went like this, boom, I need a new challenge.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, cool. And that's when I started thinking about being a solo guitar player. Where is this going to lead me? And then just kind of like, I'm going to go this way. And then at the same time, the relationship was developing. So all these things were directing me like, this is it. I was 10 years away from Minnesota. I learned what I needed to learn, and I was going to head back to Minnesota. And yeah, and then I started Church of Cash in Honolulu about 2 months before I moved. And then it was instantly popular with all these kids coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. They have all these bases on Hawaii. They wanted to come back after being in the sand for so long to see some American music, and we were more than happy to play for them. And it was really quite an honor to play for these young kids that were just, off the battlefields, and they just wanted to cut loose and hear some Johnny Cash, and it was just a cool experience. But that's when, back in 2010, I packed up everything, put it on a sea container ship, and then started heading back towards Minnesota.
That is amazing. And I'm so glad that you had that moment where you could actually pat yourself on the back and do like I made it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That not many people realize those moments, or if they do, they don't take that time. And that's so important, as you know, because what you're doing, as you know, is not an easy journey. If there is somebody that's watching, because we have a lot of students across the country that watch, and everybody thinks they're going to, when they get into music, they're going to make it. They're going to make it big. But you were that business person that, you studied it. It was just like when growing up at the farm, you had your chores. It was, a daily routine. What advice would you give to somebody wanting to get into the business?
It's kind of harsh advice. But for example, I remember Mondays was always my day to go to the bank. I work all weekend long. You get the checks. Monday was always my routine before cell phone checks, right? So I'd go to the bank, and they'd, oh, Church of Cash. So what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a musician. I tour internationally and play Johnny Cash. And they're like, wow, that's so cool. I'm a musician too. I'm like, oh, but it looks like you're working at a bank. They're like, yeah, I need this so I can afford my apartment,
Right.
and then I can do my things. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but once, especially when you're young, and the music industry is rather unforgiving. It's just not an industry you can really, it takes a while to figure out what is your thing. It takes a long time to really figure that out. And what your thing is going to be is what's going to bring in money. And then you can afford thinking about houses and all that kind of stuff. But I lived with 4 guys in an apartment for many, many years, or I didn't live anywhere at all. And I just toured and lived in a tour bus because that's all I did. I'm not saying that's the road you have to go down, but that's the road. If you really want it, you have to. And I think you kind of touched on that yourself. You had to clean bathrooms, like, like, oh, I want to be on TV. No, you got to start somewhere. You got to get your foot in the door. You have to do all these things. And it takes a ton of sacrifice. And being on the road back in those days, I missed a lot of weddings. I missed birthdays, funerals, all that kind of
Holidays.
stuff.
Yeah.
Holidays, family members being super mad at you because why can't you hang out on a weekend? Weekends are my work days. And, it's not easy. It's a balance. It's saying I'm sorry a lot, and then trudging forward as hard as you can. And you got to be very, very committed. If you're young and early and you're like, I want to be comfortable and this, I'm like, one or the other, man. I wasn't comfortable until maybe my mid 40s, or maybe early 40s. But point being, it took a long, long time of just kind of sacrificing that part.
Never giving up.
Yeah, that's just putting your focus into what is your thing and building your thing until it becomes something that's generating money to a point where, like, okay, I feel confident and I'm going to have something great. My wife and I are at a place right now. We just signed over. We're going to build our own home. Fantastic. And that's just it's just absolutely amazing part to be at this point right now that, I worked this hard for this many years, and then we get to decide how we want to have the house. And I'm such a nerd. I want a big garage so I can pack my van, and then I have all my merchandise and gear I could easily take in and out of the van. I mean, that's what I'm thinking of mostly of, but of course it's just, we're going to have just a blast doing it. And, like I said, I'm 49, almost 50 now. I want to do this stuff while I still got some good years left and I can enjoy it. and I couldn't be happier where things are, and it's because I worked so hard
You
younger
earned
in
it.
my younger life. Yeah, and I
Yes,
earned it. I earned it for
absolutely.
sure.
And you're not 29, you're 49 building your first house. That's
Hmm.
amazing. Many people never get the opportunity to build a house, especially in today's high interest
My
rates.
God.
So that's even better. You were talking about the garage and being able to grab your gear and things. And above this video, as I had shared, I've included links to your various shows and social media and music, etc. But where can we catch your shows in the next couple of months live if we
Mm.
wanted to?
Okay, well, I'm going to be in Montana. I'll be in Butte, Montana on Friday, and Missoula at
Okay.
the Wilma Theater on Saturday. I'll be in Aitkin at the Ripple Center on November 1.
Okay.
And then coming up on the 6th and the 6th, around that area, I'll be in Italy, then Austria, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands for about 25 days. So if you guys are out in Europe, just come find me out there. And then I would say December. December's always been a light month for me, and it's been nice just to kind of like get off the road, decompress a little bit. I have one show in St. Paul at the Turf Club, and then one show in Fargo, North Dakota. And then after that is when my Folsom Prison tour starts, and that's going to start in January.
Okay. Isn't there a show of that at here in Burnsville in
Yeah,
Minnesota at the
yes.
Ames Center or
At
no?
the Ames Center on February 1. We just released tickets for it.
Yes.
Um, and I'm very excited. This will be our third year playing it. We sell out every year.
Fantastic.
This would be for my Folsom Prison experience. Um, I can't tell. I when I tell this story, I get super kind of giddy about it. I'm just so proud of this show. It's so much fun. We put a lot of hard work into this, but I don't think there's anything like this out there. And my friend and I,
Mhm.
my friend Tom Pickard and I, we wrote this together when COVID hit. And you can imagine COVID just totally
Yes.
wiped out my business, wiped out his business. He has two venues that he has, and the government shut him down. The government shut me down. We talked about this for years, but I'm busy touring. He's busy doing his thing. And I remember when the whole planet shut down, he gave me a call. He's like, "This is our opportunity to write this thing." And I thought, yes, you know, basically not playing any music or playing very little music in 2 years was just kind of crazy for
I
me.
can imagine.
And my wife was a little bit worried. I made it through, but we wrote this Folsom Prison thing. We did a lot of research on Johnny Cash and Folsom and his record that he did. We took a lot of the facts of the day, we wove them into the script, and we created something that even if you're not a Johnny Cash fan, you'll understand. It's got plenty of humanity in it. It's got really funny moments. It's got real dark moments. It's got some confrontational moments between Johnny himself, the warden, and him knocking together. Um, all these elements just created such a fun show. I'm getting such great feedback from it. We're 37 shows in on this. We've toured it last year, and we got as far out as Chicago, Milwaukee, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, kind of that bubble. And in the new year, in December, we're taking it all the way out as far east as Washington, D.C. We're playing at the Lincoln Theater out there, which is a very, very great place to play. It's going to be the old notch on the old venue belt for me because it's an important venue. Going all the
Congrats.
way up right outside of New York, Syracuse, Philadelphia. We're playing all the real towns all the way out there. So we're doing a bunch of weekends, and then we're doing that long tour at the end. So I think it's 17 or 18 days as of this point. And it's such a big group. I mean, it's 17 piece. It's 13 piece on stage, 4 piece
Wow.
support. So we're talking tour buses, truck with a big trailer. I mean, and at this point, this is a lot of logistics when
Yeah.
you get to things this big. You got to think, 9, 10 hotel rooms,
I was just gonna say, yep.
food every day, making sure everybody's taken care of. Every venue is different. Every deal is different. Every promoter is different. So we're learning a lot, and I'm glad we did like the bubble tour like we did last year as much as we did, because this tour is much bigger. And as we go, this tour will probably grow into a month at a time, maybe 2 months a year. We do this tour. I I think the sky's the limit on this thing. I think it's so entertaining. I think once people really start hearing about this thing, it's going to be big as any Broadway musical or some of those big, or Cirque du Soleil or Shenzhen, one of those touring groups. I think we could be just as big as any of those, because I believe in the product so much, and I believe that the entertainment value is so dang high.
Well, and it sounds like you've already received that feedback, so and clearly having traveled and played internationally, what an incredible story. Before we go, before we close out the show, I'm going to have you play a little bit. Thank you for agreeing to do that. But before we do that, is there anything that we haven't covered in this interview that you wanted to share with our viewers?
I think it's coming from a point now that I've done as much as I do, and maybe, not trying to be too nerdy about it, but a little bit inspirational is when you believe and you set your mind at it. And like, I can't step too far back and really see my life, but say if I run across an uncle, and my uncle will just like grab me by the shoulder. He's like, listen, I've known you since you were 13 years old, and you were always thinking about this. You're always doing this. And here you are touring the world and creating these great things. I'm like a week behind me and 5 months ahead of me kind of guy. I can't see my life that in that scope. And then it takes me running into an old friend or a relative that can put it into perspective for me. But I couldn't have done it if I didn't have the willpower and the dream. And the dream started really, really early. Like, this is what I want to do. And I stuck to my guns. Of course, there were some high points and there were some super duper low points. And there were times where like, I don't know if this is it anymore. I remember hitting like mid 30s. I'm like, do I go back to get an office job? Do I go back to school? Is this, is this my life? You challenge yourself. And yes. I'm like, it's too late, man. I've been on this road too long. I'm going to follow it through. And I'm so glad I did. Very, very happy with it.
I'm so glad you did too. And it takes, in addition to all of your tenacity and your drive, you also have to have talent. And you do. Oh, did you freeze up there a little bit? Wonder. I think you might have frozen up. If you need to jump out and come back in, you can. If you can hear me. Let's see if I can. I am going to. I think you have frozen, Jay. So if you need to jump out and then click on that link and come back in, feel free if you can hear me. Yep, I think that's what he's going to do. And while we're waiting for him to come back, again, my name is Carla Berline, host of Around Town TV, Minnesota's lifestyle and business experts. We've been featuring the best kept secrets, businesses, organizations, and people like Jay Ernest, who is an internationally known singer, songwriter, and musician who's been sharing his story. And I believe he'll be jumping back in with us shortly so that we can have him play a little bit before we close out the show. He's well known for his gigs called Church of Cash, which is a world-class Johnny Cash tribute. He also does Jay Ernest shows in Europe, and I see him coming back in. And he also does the Folsom Prison Experience. That was perfect timing. I was just regrouping, and we've got a good group. Oh, we have a good group online to join us too. So you froze up there, but I think you had finished the sentence, so that's good. So what I would love for you to do is share some of your talents with us, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd love to.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody loves Johnny Cash, so I'm going to do one song, or do a little half a song for you, and then I'm going to ask Carla what song she wants to hear, and I'm going to play that song.
Oh, gosh.
I hear the train a-coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, but I'm stuck at Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. but that train keeps rolling on down to San Antone. When I was just a babe, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. Well, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry.
Love it.
All right. What
Well,
song do you want to hear, Carla?
I want to hear the one you play for your dad.
I'd love to do that one. So this one's called The Man in Black. And around 1970, Johnny Cash took on this persona, the Man in Black. He wanted to wear the black for the upper unrepresented in society and in life, the people that nobody thinks about. And Johnny became their representative in a lot of different aspects. It became his personality. He was the Man in Black, and he wrote this song. It goes like this. Well, you wonder why I always dressed in black? Well, I never wear bright colors on my back. And why does my appearance seem to have a somber tone? Well, there's reason for the things that I have on. I wear it for the poor and beaten down, living in a homeless, hungry side of town. And I wear it for the prisoner who's long paid for his crime, but who's there 'cause he's a victim of the time. I'd love to wear a rainbow every day and tell the world that everything's okay. But I'll try to carry off a little darkness off my back till things are brighter. I'm the Man in Black.
I love it. Thank you so much. You are incredibly talented. That's actually what I was saying when it froze up. You have to have that talent in addition to your business acumen and your drive and tenacity. You truly do have to be talented. And
Carla, yes, you do. But some people are not totally born with that. I was not totally born with that. I think my voice was decent when I was young, but I stunk at guitar when I was young. My friends would come over, they say, "You suck, Jay." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm still practicing." And I was not very good. So, but it was like enough time goes across, and you got to put your time in. And so I'm just letting you know, like, some people are naturally super talented, and I think that's unreal. You see these little 5-year-old kids playing piano, like Tchaikovsky or whatever. It's just pretty amazing. But if you have the dream, it doesn't matter your talent level, because it'll come up to your dream sometime.
That is, yes. That is great advice. Great words of wisdom. Anything else before we close out the show?
I would love for folks out there to, first of all, go to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream. Check out my Jay Ernest stuff. I love it when I see people talk about it and stream it. I'm very proud of it. I think it's really, really good music. You can hear it. I got this low voice. I think I have a distinct voice in this world of high tenor singers. I'm one of the bass guys, and I think it's well worth a listen. Jay Ernest, search me out, find me. And if you want to see a show, just find my website, Church of Cash Music, or Folsom Prison, or Jay Ernest. They all tie in. And you will find all my social medias there. Follow me, please. I keep up on all my social media. No matter where I'm at in the world, I'm always, shooting like a little live video or doing a story or doing some posts and trying to share this lifestyle with the people out there that are followers of me personally or my businesses. I kind of want to share, like, oh, I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska now. Check this out. Or I'm in Bangor, Maine. Check out the ocean. And I just have fun doing that. And I think if there might be some entertainment value in it for you. But in the end, I love it when people support the artists out there trying to create the soundtrack to our world. I mean, in the end, actors, they always try to be musicians. politicians, they want to be musicians.
Right.
And I'm not saying I'm above everybody. I'm just saying that this is a great lifestyle, and I think it's super duper fun. And I just love it when people could be a part of it, and I can perform for them.
Well, and I thank you for sharing. And above this video, everything he was just talking about, all the links I've posted to all his brands and his shows, his gigs, where you can get everything, his social media. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yep. And somebody posted, a person that I know very well who has been near and dear to my heart. She wrote, "A life by design." And I agree with her, Jay. I really, truly believe that. And then another, actually, it was one of the nurses for my parents who became a dear friend. My mom was sick for 27 and a half years, 12 years and 2 months with metastatic breast bone cancer, and dad with lung, lymph node, and brain cancer. And she was fantastic. She said, "You sound just like Johnny Cash." Great.
That's very
Yes,
nice.
you do. Yes. And is that like telling a psychic, "Wow, you really were right"? I don't know, but you do. Yeah, fantastic. Anything else, Jay, before we go?
Carla, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and all your lovely fans out there that listen to you and follow you around. I'm following all your links right now myself. And I think this is really important that that you give the hardworking artists out there a voice and a platform. There's a story behind what you're seeing with Church of Cash. I'm not the one to pontificate when I'm singing. People want to go there and they want to hear the music. So I'm not one to be like, when I was a kid, and that seems a little boring to me. But I think in this kind of situation where we're sitting down talking about, this is the right time to talk about it. And for those people that are actually interested, I like that Jay Ernest guy. I want to know a little more about him. They're going to watch this through and through. And I think it's going to be great for my fans too.
Well, and I'd like to bring you back, and talk more about the European tour and the trajectory there, what your plans are, your future. But I'm just so grateful that you took the time to come share your story, share your talents and your music. What an honor it truly has been to have you on the show tonight. Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And oh, thanks. And for those tuning in tomorrow evening, I have another honor. So just like Jay talked about, to work this long in the music industry, it's really unheard of. I'm 57, just turned, to work this long in the television business. In fact, I was told when I got into TV, you can't get old or fat. And I was like, well, okay. But I actually get to tomorrow evening have on my show the woman who is being honored on the 19th at the Upper Midwest Emmys for the Gold Circle. She's being inducted into the Gold Circle Honor Society, which is for 50 years in the business. She's the first woman ever to be inducted into the Gold. Men have been able to work in the industry for just years and years and years, but women not necessarily. And she was president of the Upper Midwest Emmys. She's become a dear friend of mine, very supportive of me. And her name is Jody Ritaka Carlini. So please tune back in at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time tomorrow evening. And then we've got a great lineup coming up starting Sunday next week that I'll fill you in on. Thank you again, Jay. I look forward to connecting and staying in touch and having you back on the show in the future.
I look forward to it already, Carla.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. My name is Carla Berlin, along with Jay Ernest, singer, songwriter, and musician. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.